guys, it's Kelly Taylor here, and I am back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be using the Palm Beach cover plate. So I know that I told you guys that the Paradise Plumerias video would be coming, and I had all intentions of using it. But do you ever have something that just like, you're like, I know that I really like it, but then something happens and you love it? So it totally changed my game plan. So let's talk about this Palm Beach cover plate. It is a cover plate, but it's not a die. It doesn't actually cut anything. What it does is it embosses the scene into your paper. So I'm just using Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock. I like to line mine up from the back just to make sure everything is straight. And then I put a little bit of tape on the back and a whole lot of tape on the front. And that's how I do my cover plates that cut as well. And then I just ran this through like a regular die. I didn't use an embossing mat or anything like that. I would be interested to see in the future though, if that would give a deeper impression. Not that you need one. I would just wonder if it would give you more texture. So my original game plan was to use this along with its stencils. Okay, it has coordinating stencils, and so it makes it really easy to make a scene. And then I was going to do some like forced perspective with like the flowers in the front and the Palm Beach scene in the back. But then I made it and I loved it so much, I could not bear to cover it up. That's basically what happened. So let's talk about this is totally beginner friendly, a really easy way that we can add details to these stencil scenes to help make them, oh, that's really pretty, to wow, that looks like it took a whole lot of time. So in order to use the stencils, I'm going to be using my Distress inks. You can use whatever inks you like. I like to build mine up. So I do some shading with my ink blending before I do anything else to the scene. And this is how I would do it if I wasn't going to do anything else to the scene. So for the water and the sky, I started both with the Salvage Patina, and this is on the same stencil. I will tell you that the large palm tree on the left, it isn't connected to anything except for on the bottom. So there were some times, especially with the darker colors, where I kind of had to hold it with my finger. That's not really a big deal because of these newfound sticky mats that we're seeing in the industry nowadays. I don't have to use all the tape and stuff. So me having to hold one little area with my finger is not a big deal to me. You could tape it down, or you could use my way old school trick of using the repositionable adhesive on the back. My go-to was Tombow Mono Multi Glue, but they have sprays as well. So if you don't have a sticky mat, you could put a repositionable spray on the back. Here you can see where I'm just holding that one part of the tree just to make sure. And I don't know that it would move and make an issue. Like, it didn't move that much, but it did wiggle a little, and I wanted crisp lines. So from the Salvage Patina, I went to Salty Ocean, and I'm leaving the area kind of where the hills, bushes, greenery kind of meet in the center a little bit lighter. And for the water, I'm leaving the shoreline lighter. For the sky, I used the first three colors. So now we're out to the Mermaid Lagoon. And I'm going to use this to darken up the sky just a little bit, kind of around the top and the corners. But the last color, the Uncharted Mariner, I'm only going to use in the water. I am not going to use it in the sky. I think that this would look so amazing, and I'm sure there's people on the design team who are probably already done it. But I think this would look so fantastic with like a sunrise or a sunset kind of color scheme in the background. Maybe even, I might even play around with a little bit of a night scene and just, do some like cast shadows. I knew that I really liked this. But until I saw it completed, then I was like, I love it. I love it so much. And I think it's super versatile. Like, you could use it for so many things. So anyway, I always do all my ink blending twice. If you watched any of my videos, then you know that I just feel like it gives me a better blend. So I always do mine twice, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. Just gives me a good blend and a nice saturation of color that I'm super happy with. So this is the first stencil. I believe there's 6 in the pack. So I'm going to remove this one, and then the next one that we will put down does the clouds and the sand section, kind of like the shore section. So for the clouds, you don't really need to add anything to them if you want to leave them white. I did go in with the leftovers that were on my blending brushes of the Salvage Patina and the Salty Ocean, and just kind of add a little bit of that to the bottom, but I didn't pick up any extra ink. I just used what was left. And then for the shore portion, oh, I forgot about the birds. This one's got the birds on there too. For the birds, you could go in with like a black soot and get like really bold birds. I went in with the hickory smoke because I wanted them to be a little bit lighter. And I am using one of the Be Creative blending, what do they call these? I don't even remember. They're detailed blending brushes maybe. They have a couple of different sizes. They have a 5, a 7, and a 10. And those are really great if you like these more detailed scenes, because then you don't have to do any masking. So once I got the birds in with the hickory smoke, I'm going to do the sandy shore. For the lightest part of the shore, why can't I talk? Does anybody know? I'm using the antique linen, and then I am going to use brush corduroy and ground espresso, I think. So my brushes are like the size of them are the size based on what I use the most. So like you might have noticed, my Salty Ocean one is the extra large size, like the background, because that's what I do the most with it. So sometimes you'll see like a brown, like we saw for the brush corduroy, that brown one is rather large. And that is because I'm typically using it for background. But these nice little detail ones that they have are very helpful, especially if you just want to add a little bit of color. So they obviously got darker the closer it got to the water, because the sand that was wet would be darker. So then this next one is going to be the palm trees, the back like hill, shrub, grassy area, and one of these little plants in the top right. I like a lot of color variation in my scenes. I like a lot of color variation, period. So I knew that I was going to be doing a little bit of mixing to try to get different greens. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought that I was going to do some different colors with the palms and the hill and then this little plant. I didn't. I ended up doing them all the same. So you'll see that little palm tree on the left. I don't do it because I thought I was going to do it a different color. I didn't. I did them all the same. Because originally, like I was thinking I was just going to be doing the stenciling and then doing the kind of, like I said, the forced perspective, kind of like a little halo of flowers. But then I didn't do it. I know I'm not the only one. I cannot be. How sometimes like your card just takes on a life of its own. That's pretty much what happened here. I was just like along for the ride of what was going on. So for this one, I used peacock feathers as my lightest, then lucky clover, and then pine needles. This is a more like a blue-green kind of feel. I am going to go back in here with a little, this is a number 7 of those little detailed brushes. And I'm going to pick up just a little bit of that pine needles and kind of work it into the different branches, like where the branches meet together. And this was just to kind of help get a little bit more separation. You really, if you're going to do the next step after the stenciling, you don't really need to do that. That was just me testing out and seeing how I liked that. So then this one only has the right hillside. That's all that's on there. And can I tell you, I'm a Disney girl. I always have been, even before I had kids. Not Disneyland per se, but I love the movies. I love the animated movies. And when Jelly Bean was little, her favorite movie was Moana. And I have seen Moana more times than one person can count. I have seen it so many times. And it's a good movie. It is a good, cute movie. No complaints, especially about the soundtrack. Love it. But when I was doing this little hillside with the Twisted Citron, on the mowed lawn and the rustic wilderness. Like when I started putting on the rustic wilderness, all I could think was Tafiti. Like that was it. That's all I could think. I was like, this is so that, like, it just sparked that memory for me. That's exactly what it looked like in my mind. And then I just embraced it. So here, this one is definitely more yellow green. And then here is where I am going to mix my colors because I have 2 shrubs in the front here. And those, I wanted them to stand out from the background, but I didn't want them to clash. Plus, not everybody has a immense amount of greens to choose from. I do. I have all of the distressing colors because that's where I chose to invest my money. But I understand that not everybody's like that. So in order to separate them, I am choosing different shadow colors. So I did the Twisted Citron and then I did the Mowed Lawn. Now I'm going to go in with Lucky Clover, and then the darkest color is going to be Pine Needles. So it's like a combination of the 2 greens we've already used to create a third green color, but everything still stands out from one another and works well together. At this point is where I'm really like, I am super enjoying the scene. I think it's very pretty. For the rocks, I chose to go with that hickory smoke because I already have it with the birds. And then for the darkest shading, I showed you the black soot, but I didn't actually re-ink my brush. I just used the leftovers that were on there to add a little bit of shading to the bottom. For the tree, I almost called them tree stems. For the tree trunks, I'm using the same browns that you saw in the sand. So you guys know how I've talked about before about using repeat colors to create some cohesiveness in our card. So I did the brush corduroy, shaded them with the ground espresso. And at this point, all of the stenciling is done. And it is a beautiful scene. And I love it. But I know that I can take it to that wow stage with doing a little bit of additional coloring. And so that is what I am going to do. Now, you guys saw, I told you it was fast and easy. This is definitely beginner friendly because all of the shading you've already done with the ink blending, which is way easier to do than doing it with markers. So we're just going to follow along what we've already put down. So for the trees, we're going to create a little bit of separation amongst those palm branches. So any place that it's kind of pointing down, I'm going to put my shadow on that side. Because palms kind of bloom out, is that the word I want? Grow out from the center. Your direction is going to be based on where the stem or the branch is coming from the center. So this is a great opportunity. If this is difficult for you, just turn your paper so that you're always coloring in the same direction and your branch is always pointing the same way. But then this way you can see, even just by going in and adding that little bit of shadow at the bottom and having it meet in the center, even if we stopped here and just did this darker color, which is a G28 or G29, then you would still get much more detail. And I'm going to do the same thing for all of the palms. I'm adding just a little line of shadow, and then where it kind of curves in, where there would be a separation of the palm, I am just doing like a little flick of color right inside there. I'm also doing flicking from the middle towards the outside in whichever direction the branch is growing. So you just need to, the easiest way to do it is to just turn that paper, and then you can always see which direction it's growing from, and doing those little flicks of color. And like I said, this is only one color. We've done a lot of shading with the ink blending in the background. So this part, you really could do just the one color and leave it. I didn't. I did two. I did 2 colors. But you guys, if you watch my videos, you know normally for Copic markers, I'm like a 4-color blend pretty much all the time. That's my status quo. But with this, because we already have some color down, we don't have to worry about filling in the entirety of it. We're just adding in the details. For the hillside, Remember, in the beginning, before we did any of the stenciling, we pressed this. We did this cover plate impression, which means there's lots of little details that are pressed in to the hillside, to the rocks, to the water. And so when I'm doing the hillside, I'm doing just almost like, I don't want to call them dots because then you're going to think I'm talking about stippling, and it's not stippling. It is almost like you hold your brush so that it's slightly on its side, and that way when you're pressing down into the like the hillside, it's leaving almost like little leaf shaped kind of blobs, which is exactly, it mimics the impressions that are already put in there. And then I am just following those right along. So you can see just by adding this color, without adding anything else, we have already brought in so much detail. Because we have two different colors combinations going on with the large hillside and then the shrubs, I am going to use similar colors, but not exactly the same. So for the lighter hillside, I'm using my darkest color is a YG17. For the shrubs, my darkest color will be a YG67. But see how I'm holding it kind of on the side and pushing down, just like very, it's not specific. I used to not like watching people's videos when they were like, oh, your mind will fill in the rest. Or I'm like, no, I need specific direction. So I don't want to tell you your mind will fill in the rest, because there is a kind of method to the madness, but just follow those impressions that are already there and put down your color. Now, you don't want it to be solid lines of color. You want it to be kind of that tapping motion with just the side of your brush. And that's going to fill in a lot of texture. For the two shrubs in front, I did add a little bit of shadow toward the top, the same way we did with the palms, where I just picked the side that was facing down to the ground and added a little bit of shadow there. Now that the greenery is done, and like I said, those hillsides and shrubs were done the same way. No flicking required, just side of the brush taps. Now for the sand, this is where we're going to use the kind of a more stippling technique, which is just a series of small dots. I am using the darker color closest to the shoreline where we had the darker shading. And then going in with my next color, my mid-tone, I am going over what I already have down and then extending those dots up just a little bit. This is just adding a little bit of texture and a little bit more depth and dimension. For the lightest color, again, I'm going over the area that I already have down and then extending that up. The only place I went up just a little bit higher was where we have this kind of illusion of a walkway between the shrub and the hillside. I did take that up just a little bit higher. For the rocks, you have an opportunity here. You can shade them however you want. You could shade them to be one, each one is an individual rock, or you can shade them to be a cluster. And what I mean by that is, so this one is just one rock. Okay, that's how I shaded it. But this one, I'm going to take some of that darker shading up just a little bit and see how it makes it look like it's 3 or 4 rocks. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make this one look like it's kind of a cluster of smaller rocks, or a multifaceted rock. And this, I think, single-handedly makes the scene, these rocks, because it's right up front and it makes it look much more realistic. So once I've put those, main line shadow lines down with my C7, I'm going to blend them out with my C5 and then with the C3. Again, just like everything else, I have not completely covered up that ink blending I'm doing. I'm using that ink blending as my highlight. So I'm just blending them out. For the water, because remember we talked about how we left the Uncharted Mariner as, you know, the last color in the water. So I'm going to start my darkest color right at the bottom of the paper. And this is another one. There are lines embossed into that water. I am following along for the majority of them. If you have a hard time seeing them, you can just do kind of like a couple of, you know, straight-ish or wavy-ish lines, very small waves across, and you're still going to get the same look if you have trouble seeing those lines in the water. And then working all the way out to the lightest color, which for me is going to be a B01. But I like adding all of this detail into the scene. I could not then, and I tried. I colored up the plumerias. I had every intention of putting it over the scene, and I just was like, no, I like it better by itself. That's the truth. That is exactly what happened. So since I liked it better by itself, I decided I was going to turn it into a postcard. So I am using the, what is this? I'm sorry, I can't remember the actual title. Time to Go postcard set. And one of them is kind of like this little striped die. That's the one I chose to go with. It just embosses a little stripe detail. And then the sentiment that I am using is from Plain Amazing. Plain Awesome. I'm sorry, it's Plain Awesome. So here's the only caveat. The stencil is meant for an A2 size. The postcard is a 4x6, and A2 is a 4¼ by 5½. So I'm a little short and I'm a little tall to become a postcard, but it's so perfect for a postcard, you guys. So I was like, nah, I'm going to make it work. So I cut a 4x6 piece of cardstock, and then I lined everything up to the best of my ability, to make sure that it was going to be straight in the frame. I will be honest, I have a white gap on the left and right hand side that is just about 1/8 of an inch. It isn't noticeable because it blends into the white frame from the postcard set, but then the top of it I just trimmed right along that. Before I glue the frame down, I am going to do my sentiment. I chose the Plain Awesome because this font reminded me the most of like old school postcards from when I was growing up. So I really wanted to, I just really wanted that kind of vintagey feel. And so I chose the one that says wishing you an adventurous birthday. There's a lot of other ones that would work for this too. Honeybee always has the best sentiments. But remember that we did emboss this, like, well, not emboss it. We did press this. It's not a better press plate either. How am I saying this? We cover plated it. We die cut it without cutting anything. So there is some texture there. So anywhere that it didn't stamp totally clean, I just went in with a marker and just connected the little lines. It was not a big deal. And then for the last little details, I am going to add some shimmer to the water, to the rocks, and to the clouds. Going in with a white gel pen to add the details to the rocks. And since I chose to kind of color some of them as a cluster of other rocks, I wanted to make sure to add a highlight to each of them. I did some dots in the sand to help add detail to that, because you know how the sun kind of reflects off the sand, it catches the light. And then I did some highlights along those same lines that were already pressed into there in the water. It looks a little crazy right now, but once you get the frame on it, and you have the frame on the top and bottom as well, it looks very put together and like it could be this perfect little beachy postcard. And that die, should I choose to actually turn it into a postcard, that die has the back, like where you can do it, and like where your stamp would go and the little like letters that would press it in. But I didn't add anything else to it because I wanted it to be a postcard, so there wouldn't be gems or anything like that. But I love the way that it came out. I hope that you guys love it too, and this helps you create some really easy scenes this summer. Thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.